In an article I once wrote on orchids, I find this note. I have never worked with orchids, though I have studied them and grown thousands of the plants. The truth is that I could never interest myself in any but hardly or fairly hardy plant. I could never interest myself in any but hardy or fairly hardy plants. The reason is plain to me now, though I may not have recognized it then. I have not been plant breeding for the benefit of the rich, with their conservatories and their artificial tastes, nor the florists who make fortunes out of exotic and expensive varieties. I have worked all my life for the people who love gardens and the beauty and utility of flowers, trees, and growing things, who grew them in the open field or garden, and who had no money to waste on extravagances or imported fads. Nurserymen and seedsmen have thought I ought to make a fortune. The reason why I did not may be guessed from this brief statement about orchids. Yes, my harvest of the years in arduous work and in tasks boldly undertaken and patiently carried through is fairly large. There was much I wanted to do that I could find neither time nor money to undertake. There were enterprises that failed and projects that had to be abandoned. There were disappointments and disillusioning experiences. There were periods of discouragement and days of ill health that interrupted the progress of the work. But, taken as a whole, I suppose I have done my share, and it is with a good deal of satisfaction that I view the whole record as more mellow and less impatient than I was younger. I look back over the pages and try to sum up their contents. As regards my own work, I have long since ceased to think of it as anything more than a contribution to the whole body of knowledge and an addition, in its results and conclusions, to the technique and practice of plant development. For me, it has become the work. It still remains to be done. The most energetic and the most gifted and the most successful man could only add a little to the precious store of information and lay a board or two in the platform on which science must stand. The horizon of plant breeding, as one of the richest and one of the least occupied of all the territories of science, is illimitable. On it, a few men have sketched vague pictures of the possibilities yet to be realized. Only a hint of what may be done has been revealed to us. It remains for the next few generations to develop and expand the discoveries and explorations and acquisitions of the pioneers, but that there lies beyond that horizon a new world of beauty, utility, wealth, and good for all mankind cannot be questioned. I myself have had a little glimpse of the promised land. I have already written something about the friendships that have been mine and what they have meant to me. They came unsolicited, as all true friendships must come. They were brought to me at my home because I was too busy often to get away from here. And these friendships, as I have shown, were more often made and maintained through letters than through personal contacts. For every friend whom I have met and talked with, I have a dozen whose faces I should not know if they were to appear in my room at this moment, whose characters and lives and histories I can only infer from what they have written me, and whose voices I have never heard and shall never hear. Yet these have been marvelous and profitable friendships for me, and I am sure that on both sides there exists through them a loyalty, an understanding, an affection that could not be heightened or deepened if we were to be thrown together constantly to the end of our days. To elaborate or formal honors that have been bestowed on me are gratifying to me, not so much for themselves, for the gold medals struck, the medallions etched, the testimonials illuminated, the resolutions spread, or the headlines set up. As for the kindly spirit made manifest in them and the gracious motive behind them, honorary societies, states, the nation, and foreign governments have recognized my work. 2 colleges have given me degrees. The government has passed an act of Congress designed to do honor to my services in horticulture. Scientific bodies have voted resolutions or made me a fellow of their orders, and a considerable number of fraternal organizations, clubs, societies, and associations have presented me with honorary memberships to show their appreciation. In one sense, medals and ribbons and decorations and honorary memberships are part of the tinsel and pomp of life, and I have never worn a badge or a tag or signed doctor before my name or a string of letters behind it. Yet, in a record of the harvest of the years, I suppose such matters have their place and play their part. What it seems to me they demonstrate more than anything personal is that the service of mankind is always recognized, in one fashion or another, if the man or the woman concerned is sincere and zealous in that service. The service itself is, of course, the measure, but the honors bestowed are tokens. If they are not taken too seriously or overemphasized as to importance, that will serve with some accuracy as the scale by which that measure can be read. And there is no use saying that any of us despise such honors. Now and then we pretend to, for purposes of public consumption. Yet I notice that I myself often have occasion, when there are visitors around, to leave the safe door a little wide so that someone will see the trophies there and will insist on knowing what they are. They are always accommodated and shown the whole collection, a ream of papers, and about a quart of medallions. We don't grow up entirely. I can get as much satisfaction out of a transaction like that as any boy with a sore thumb to display, or any mighty warrior whose breast is hidden under a quarter of an acre of coveted medals. In my harvest of the years, I find, finally, a store of philosophy deduced from my experiences, my thoughts, my contacts, but particularly from my lessons in nature's school. Philosophy is still a flourishing brand in our universities, a flourishing branch in our universities. But philosophical reflection grows a rarer thing day to day. We are so intent on efficiency, money-making, getting ahead, keeping abreast of the times, and all the shibboleths and fetishes of these times that we cannot find leisure to examine ourselves and teach other and nature sufficiently to draw conclusions and morals as we might well do. True, the old philosophers covered the ground pretty well, though I cannot find them agreeing on more than a few points. But it seems to me that philosophy, to be useful, should, like religion and science and knowledge, be brought up to date. Sophocles, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Kant, Spencer, Emerson, all contributed something to our knowledge of why and whence and wherefore. But our modern day not only demands new thought and fresh vision, but makes both necessary because of changes it has brought to us in the facts and conditions of living. What is civilization? What is idealism? Which way does our future lie? Why do we progress so slowly? After more than 13 centuries of Mohammedanism, 20 centuries of Christianity, 25 centuries of Buddhism and Confucianism, and 4,000 years of Hebrew religion, we are still greedy, cruel, selfish, short-sighted in our relations, and ready to go to war on almost any pretext and dissipate in a few months the savings of decades. The flower of our youth and the friendliness that it has taken half a century to build up. After hundreds of years spent in fostering education and encouraging scientific research, we will throw all our hard earned lessons aside in a moment of anger or of rapacity and to become savages again. Is there no hope for us? Or are we to go forever, like the frog in the well, slipping back 1 foot for every two we gain? If we look in the textbooks or the histories or the creeds of man, we are certain to be baffled in our search for an answer. But if we go to nature and inquire into her process, we discern more than one glimmer of light. The truth is that life is not material and that the life stream is not a substance. Life is a force, electrical, magnetic, a quality, not a quantity. And if we start there, we can understand a lot of things about man and his works and orders and processes. This force is positive and negative, constructive and destructive, building up and pulling down, forward moving and retrogressive. There is a pull of two powers all the time, and sometimes the upward pull is stronger, and sometimes the down pull has the mastery. We get discouraged with the material, but if we could think of the force, we should see how steadily and surely it is impelling us all toward a better and higher and nobler density. The duty of each individual is to make himself an influence on the right side. Electrons and molecules and all those particles that physical science deals with have no choice, but must pull or push, attract or repel according to their order. It is only man who can make himself a tiny fragment of good influence and join the positive and constructive element in this eternal and necessary tug of war toward the progress one way and toward chaos the other. If it were not for the tendency of strong, wise, and good men, of most of the women, and of practically all the little children of the world, to want to get on the right side and make the pull an upward movement instead of a downward drag, I could well be discouraged with civilization. If I had seemed, in the last 10 or 15 years of my life, to be impatient with education and religion, it has been, not because I am naturally fault-finding or troublesome, but because those two forces have always been powerful in the world and always will be, and their service and influence in the struggle have not seemed to me to have measured up to their stupendous opportunities. The religion that belittles or denies or stultifies knowledge and science and the search for truth is a false and dangerous religion, casting its vote on the side of darkness. The education that makes a machine of itself and turns all the steel of its children into the pins and needles of mediocrity is an influence on the conservative and so on the reactionary side of the scale. What is wrong with the world? Not commercialism, the movies, war, sensational newspapers, sex stories, short skirts, joyriding, drinking, or jazz. It is the spirit and tendency and disposition of the human family. If we were on the right side, putting all our puny strength on the rope and heaving together on the upward drag towards better things, little details of conduct and little tempests of social behavior and little fads and foibles and silly habits will be of no more weight than the fly on the back of the horse which leans into the collar and moves the load. It is what we are trying to win for ourselves and the world that counts. And if an automobile, a talking machine, and a season baseball ticket are all we care about having, those are about all we shall get, and our contribution to the whole enterprise of life will be as negligible as though we were Hottentots. This state of civilization is not due to the length of time we have had religions or education or science or ideals. The present state of civilization is due to the use we have made of those factors. Their influence has been on the moral side, but has it always been on the ethical side? It has been long on formula and creed, but hasn't it fallen a little short on practice and elbow grease? And influence is the greatest power and force in the world. Nature teaches us that it is the moving, bending, impelling, directing, and determining factor in all life. For without it, we should be cells swimming in warm salt water today. I believe in the immortality of influence. It is the one sure, certain, permanent, eternal thing we can know positively anything about. It is in our own keeping and possession. It is ours to make what we will. It is given to us as the greatest and most potent gift of all our benefits and possibilities. We can strengthen and enlarge it by thought and study and care and the right heart. Or we can dissipate and misuse it and so weaken it and ourselves and the race that we become negative and worthless and a load on the backs of our fellows. Your influence is your birthright and your epitaph. It can make you ephemeral, inconsequential, or it can sing through the years. Mankind has always been compelled to recognize the infinite forces which are beyond his control, fundamental lines of energy force which through long aeons of the past have resulted in animals, plants, and man, an evolution from the simple to the complex. Mental evolution is the reaching of a man toward more and more freedom from outside aid, and the steady growing toward a better mental and moral fiber from within his self. Do I ignore what is generally called the spiritual nature of man? No, it is the corona, the flower of life, the fruit of which is altruism, the desire to help ourselves and others to higher and better thoughts and action. In other words, to a more perfect state of harmony with environment.